natural fertility, in case this is a surprise. Because I know the Tantra workshop yesterday was kind of a surprise for some people. They thought they were learning about juicing. So this is about natural fertility, and it's both about fertility in the aspect of babies and getting pregnant, but also fertility in the aspect of women's care and overall reproductive health. So those who are wanting to get pregnant and those who are not will benefit from both of this talk. And it will be mostly about women. There is some things we'll cover about men, but it will be mostly geared towards women. So my name is Hethir Rodriguez, and I am an herbalist, massage therapist. I have a bachelor's in holistic nutrition, and I'm also a doula. And the way that I got to where I'm sitting today is about, I think it's about 5 or 6 years ago, my husband and I became surprisingly pregnant, and we shortly miscarried after that. And then about 6 months later, we got pregnant again, and then we miscarried. And at that time, I began asking a lot of questions of my doctor. I was like, what can we do to prevent this? Why did it happen? You know, have you heard of this happening before? And he said, we can't do any testing until you've had a third. And so, yes. So,
until what?
Until I've had a third miscarriage.
Oh, okay.
So at the time, I was in school to become a midwife, and which I did not complete. But I went to school, I was going to school to be a midwife, and I knew that. I was like, there's got to be answers. This can't just be like, oh, you have to wait for it to happen again, and then you have to wait for testing. I just kind of, frankly, pissed me off. So I started on this research frenzy. I started looking at studies. I started looking at old herbal texts. I started looking at all these different places. And what I found was there was actually a lot of information, both scientifically proven, used for thousands of years, of natural, safe therapies to help women not only with miscarriage, but with other issues, other fertility issues, such as endometriosis, secondary infertility, unexplained infertility, PCOS. I mean, the list goes on. So that's how I got to my current path, and I've been doing that for about 5 years now. So I'm going to first talk a little bit about what is natural fertility. So what natural fertility is it's basically helping the body to be healthy and get back to balance so it can function on its own. A lot of the current fertility world, just so you know, about 1 out of 5 women in Western cultures has some form or some trouble of getting pregnant. It has become pretty dramatic. You know, you'll be in areas like this where everybody is so fertile. I mean, you'll go to Mexico, you'll go to South America, Asia, but it's a different experience for, you know, a lot of the women in the Western world. And so, basically, what natural fertility is supporting the systems of the body, supporting the body so that it can do its thing. It's not something we're going to force like a lot of the medical fertility treatments are doing. They're forcing an outcome from the body. This is supporting the body, and then the body does what it needs to. So, natural fertility, we try to avoid side effects from birth controls, fertility medications, and IVF. A lot of those things use hormones that are synthetic, which can cause cancer down the road. They may also impact the health of the baby. Natural fertility is, we focus on natural fertility also because it allows and supports preconception therapies and preconception thought, which means preparing to be a mother, preparing for your next child, or preparing your body for this, which is, I'll go into depth more in that, which is such a great gift, because it also increases pregnancy health. Natural fertility focuses on balancing, cleansing, and nourishing the body, instead of forcing something to occur. And natural fertility also allows you a chance to learn more about your body. We've worked with, one way or another, we've helped to educate or touch a life of over 1 million women now in the natural fertility realm. And what we have found through this, regardless of any of the outcome or the reason they came to us, is the women are finding that they're more in touch with their bodies, they're empowered, and they can actually hear the language of their body, which is invaluable. So we've had many, many women go through the different natural fertility therapies. There's a lot of different ones we're going to cover today. But basically, the work that we do is based on a couple of different facts. The first is, has anybody heard of, there was a study done at Harvard on some rats that showed that it's always been thought that egg production, you're born with a finite amount of eggs. Like, what you're born with is all you have for the rest of your life. A Well, there was a study done at Harvard where they were actually looking at that, and they were noticing that that the rats were actually creating new eggs. Yes. So this, like, you know, the world is flat. No, it's not. You know, it's that type of, you know, epiphany. So, and they weren't doing anything special. They were just actually paying attention and observing these rats and noticing, wait a second, this one has actually more eggs than they had before, and they're creating new eggs. So we're taking that opportunity with natural therapies and these things, and we're taking that and knowing that that is something that can happen. Especially if any of you are in the quantum physics talk. It's like, that's perfect. The second thing that all of these therapies and this kind of way of life is based upon is the fact that your body is constantly creating new cells. At every moment, the body is constantly replacing cells. Cells are dying. Your organs, your skin. I'm not sure the exact number, but there's a saying that says about every 7 years you have a completely new body because the cells are constantly replacing themselves. So our focus is on providing materials for those cells to rebuild themselves in a very helpful and optimal way. And that's done through diet, herbs, and various therapies, circulation. Am I talking too fast? Okay, because I'm fast about it. Okay. And then the next thing that we really focus on is supporting the endocrine system. The endocrine system is responsible for so much that has to do with fertility, and we'll go into more depth with that. But basically, we are here to cheerlead and to support the systems, and then the body does the rest. Because thank goodness, because it's a miracle. Okay, and then this last part is something that we focus on with all of our protocols, which is basically that every 90 days, so like what we consume today, what we put in our bodies, what we think about, what we're drinking, what we're eating, what we're not eating, today impacts the health of the egg or the sperm that will be used, that will be called to action 90 days from now. So the things that we're doing today, say someone quits smoking, or they start juicing, or they start doing something healthy for their body, that is going to impact the egg that will be available about 90 days from now. The male sperm is between 70 to 90 days, so it's a little bit shorter. So with that, that's actually really great news because that's a time frame of when you start to want to look for results, when you start to want to see, okay, is this herb working for me, or do I see shifts in my cycle? It's around that time frame. We say a minimum of 30 days. A year would be great. So it's that, you know, from 30 days minimum to a year would be great preparation. Now I'm going to talk about does anybody have any questions about any of that? So, yes, go ahead.
Does it happen any sooner? Like 90 days, 90 days is the soonest that the effect is shown.
Through egg health. There's other aspects like hormonal balance is usually seen a little bit sooner. But if you're going to specifically, because we work a lot with people with egg health, because a lot of the chemicals are impacting the DNA. So if they're trying to do that, then it doesn't go quicker than that. But there's other areas and other therapies that do work quicker, but we generally actually don't say to look for results before then, because it does take time for a lot of the people we see. They're coming from the standard American lifestyle. Does that answer your question? So the importance of conscious conception and preparing for conception. There is an author called named Janine Cavardi-Baker. Has anybody heard of her? She's passed, but she's an amazing woman, and she wrote a book called Conscious Conception, and she's written a couple of other books about birthing and yoga during pregnancy. But she kind of brought the idea of conscious conception kind of to the masses. And basically what it means is preparing, being knowledgeable before conception. Most people, conception just falls upon them as a surprise, and that's necessary for our species to continue. But if we're able to actually be conscious prior to conception, like knowing what we're eating, knowing what we're doing and putting into our bodies, the child is going to be very, very blessed. One of the main reasons it's important is there is a specific nutrient called folic acid. And folic acid is responsible for preventing neural tube defects. And basically what a neural tube defect is when the baby is forming, there's the spinal column, and then there's the spinal column with the bones, and then there's the column that has the fluid. And what happens is if there's not enough folic acid in the system, there can be a mutation there where the column is going through the bone and around, and it can cause a lot of issues neurologically for the child. The problem with this is that pregnancy tests, you can only test after you've missed your cycle. By that point, this entire system has already begun forming. So before pregnant is when they need folic acid. So preconception, and this is just one example, but preconception thought and planning is so important because you need that folic acid, you need that buildup of different nutrients. So by the time your child is already beginning to form and a pregnancy test says, yes, you're pregnant, that's taken care of. And then also, you're doing less damage to the child because you're conscious to, you know, what you're doing. And then another important thing is that preconception is the last chance that you're able to cleanse. You cannot cleanse once you're pregnant, and you cannot cleanse once you're breastfeeding. So if there's some things that you need to take care of, such as deep healing, such as getting mercury out of your teeth, such as chelation, heavy metal detox, or drastic dietary changes, these should happen before conception. Breast milk, a lot of mainstream breast milk has been found to have the highest amount of chemicals out of any food that there is. Breast milk is, of course, ultimately the best food, but because it's, you know, there's a certain amount of fat in it, that's where a lot of toxins and heavy metals and things get stored, so that is passed on to the child. So if you're able to cleanse and prepare before that conception, it's going to be, you know, even better, because that's your last chance to do kind of the hardcore cleansing, like the deep juice feasting, or, you know, a lot of these herbs can't be used during pregnancy or during breastfeeding. And it's also important for both partners to prepare. There's, I mean, it's 50-50, like there's two pieces that are going to be coming together, so the health of the sperm, the health of the egg, the body is very important. Okay, so I'm going to talk now about noontime and ovulation. How many women here know, like they chart or they kind of know their cycles? So I'll just go through this because I'm not sure, you know, how simple or how depth I should get with this. I'll just kind of go through what I have here. But basically, menstruation is the lining of the uterus that's preparing for a baby to implant. And that, during your moon time, during menstruation, is what is leaving the body. This is also a very cleansing time for the body. You can tell a lot about your body by taking notice of menstruation. By, if it's, I'm sorry guys if this gets too much information, but it's actually really good. You guys know. But if your menstruation becomes clotty, if it's dark colored, such as brown, purple, if it's thick and slow, then that is a sign of something. If it's very bright red and it flows really fast, you have a heavy flow, or you spot, these are all signs of different things that your body is telling you what's going on. There are also some women that don't have periods. Sometimes this can be due to, you know, being in sports. Sometimes this can be due to other issues. It's not always a bad thing. You can ovulate even if you do not have a period. But some women it is a sign of a deficiency, and some women it is not. Last thing about menstruation I want to talk about is I hope that all of you are aware of and using either cloth pads or diva cups or some type of thing like that, because a lot of the chemicals in pads and tampons have been shown to have very negative effects on the reproductive system. And also where they're placed is an area for deep absorption. So, and same with, you know, diapers have a lot of the similar chemicals. Okay, so ovulation. So ovulation is when the ovum, which is the egg, the female egg, leaves the ovary and is going to start making the journey down the fallopian tube. And when pregnancy or fertilization occurs, it's when the sperm comes up and meets it, and then an embryo begins to form, cell division begins, and it's going to travel down into the uterus where it's going to eventually plant itself. And so if you don't get pregnant, then that lining will go ahead and shed itself, and that is menstruation. Now, one of the best ways of telling when you're ovulating, and this is beneficial if you're trying to conceive and if you're trying to avoid pregnancy at this time, knowing when you ovulate is great, because that's when, if you're trying to not get pregnant, that's when you would avoid having sex, is during your ovulation time. There's only about a 2 to 3 day window that you can actually get pregnant every month. Generally. Some women supposedly ovulate twice a month, but I haven't seen it yet. I've heard about it, but I haven't seen it.